Assalamu alaikum, welcome to Game Changer. I'm Mariam Zia. In today's program, we will be discussing and exploring the priorities of different political parties as we are moving towards the elections that are going to be taking place on February the 8th. When we talk about these upcoming elections, of course, more than 21 million voters are poised to, of course, take part in these elections and change the destiny of Pakistan, change the future of Pakistan. But when we talk about the critical issues like climate change as well as agriculture, these are some of the issues that we see they are missing from the mainstream debates that are taking place around these election issues. Of course, Pakistan is one of the countries that is most affected by these climate issues. But unfortunately, when we look at the manifestos of different political parties, the debates surrounding climate change issues is seen mostly missing. In today's program, we will be talking about the necessity of course, these important environmental issues to be bringing forward to, of course, the consciousness of general public, the voters, as well as to the political parties, because this is going to be future of Pakistan. And when we talk about on the regional as well as global level, there is a need for cooperation among different nations. How prepared are these political parties when we talk about critical issues like climate change, climate fund, as well as the agriculture issues that the nation is facing? Of course, we will be talking about all these issues in today's program, the challenges when we talk about these manifestos and the solutions that are presented in these manifestos. Of course, some political parties have already announced their manifestos, but some of the major political parties have yet to announce their manifestos. So there is a need to bring this debate to of course general masses, to voters as well, because we know that of course more than 45% of Pakistani voters are under the age of 35. And of course, they are the future of Pakistan. It is important that these masses, these voters are of course familiar with these environmental issues. Of course, we will be talking about all these issues, the significance of manifestos, and what needs to be done to make these manifestos not some unfulfilled promises, but conscious debates surrounding critical issues. To discuss this and more, we are joined in the studios by Syed Ayub Shah, who is a political analyst. Welcome to the program. We're also joined by Mr. Naveed Aman Khan, who is political analyst. Welcome to the program. So, of course, Ayub Saab, let me start with you. When we talk about these important and critical issues, because Pakistan is one of the significant countries that has been affected by these environmental changes, do you think that these critical issues have been missing from the political parties' manifestos, and how do you see this year's election campaign or debate surrounding the issues of these political parties?
Thank you very much, ma'am. It's one of the most important thing, one of the most important debate around the world. Climate change is a reality. Climate change is affecting every country. And Pakistan, according to the last year's Global Climate Index, is the 8th most affected country because of the climate change that is manifesting itself in most worst form here. We have seen the floods, super floods, and we have some other disasters also, climatological disasters, environmental disasters, that caused us a lot of loss. So you're very right, when it comes to the election and when it comes to the political party's agenda, this global phenomena that is impacting locally rather individually is required to be there, and the political parties have to look at it and include it in a very effective manner. So while the manifesto of the political party are the general statements covering the sectors and major policy initiatives that they are aspiring to initiate after they are getting elected to the offices, but still their manifesto should reflect a complete comprehensive detail on this issue, because this is one of the major issue. It's not only affecting economy, it's not only affecting youth, it's not only affecting GDP growth rates, it's not only affecting I must say life and safety, but it's also affecting the future of Pakistan, because every single good step today reflects into centuries and decades in the future, and every bad step, that is every setback in terms of the climate disasters, climatological disasters, does reflect in terms of the decades taking us back both I mean physically as well as economically and psychologically and socially.
Right. Mr. Naveed, what's your take on this, and how do you make of the political parties' debate surrounding these issues? Because we see that there is increase in the middle class in the past few decades in Pakistan, and of course the youth bulge is another issue. What strategies should political parties employ to, of course, address these critical issues, and of course to familiarize masses about these issues as well?
Mariam, first of all, if we analyze the manifestos of different political parties, we come to know that such subjects and issues have never been priority of any political party in Pakistan, unfortunately. All the political parties, they don't think that they need to pay attention towards these issues. Number two is there are many ways to eradicate such hazardous matters, like the climate effect issues. We can take a lesson from China. In China, if a person have more than one cars, or suppose a person has 4 or 5 cars, he is not allowed to bring all 4 or 5 cars on the road at the same time. The person or the driver or the owner is given specific time or hours for every car. He or she can bring that car for such certain time on the road.
Of course, so there is civic responsibility as well.
Yes, he or she cannot, because every car is scanned and digitalized. When you bring the car on the road, it is scanned and the calculation starts, the hours starts. When you reach that end of your hour, you will have to stop that car even on the road, and then you take taxi and go to take your second car. Here in Pakistan, we don't believe in such revolutionary steps. We have 5 cars and we bring all 5 cars on the road. And that causes high level of pollution, and Lahore is number 2 or number 3 highly polluted city of the world. This is very, very unfortunate, and this is causing, the entire population of Lahore is suffering from asthmatic issues, or the breathing issues, or bronchitis, or many other skin diseases, or many other diseases.
Of course, so climate change and climate issues are of course linked to food security as well, to health issues as well. But unfortunately, this seems to be a point, or critical point rather, that seems to be missing from the agendas of political parties. And even when we look at the new voters, who are, of course, most of the information is obtained from the social platforms, and we see that there is no debate surrounding these issues. How do you think, and what needs to be done that the political parties actually communicate their stance on these critical issues to their voters?
There must be some realization somewhere in the political parties about the climate change.
But the time frame and time window is very short.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. There must be realization. We cannot say that there's altogether no realization in the political parties or their leaderships in terms of understanding the climate change and its worst impacts on Pakistan particularly, because it's an agriculture economy. An agriculture economy means directly impacted economy by the climate change. True. Because that is. But when we say how to bring about this debate in the limelight, or say how to make them go on to and discuss, is by only by advocacy, is by only making them realize that if they have to bring in an agenda of the social reforms or political reforms or economic reforms, none of these reforms will be workable unless they do something about the climate change, unless they make their development, their next future economic plans, industrialization plans, export orientation plans, energy and economy plans, they all ought to be climate resilient. They all ought to be in handshake with the climate policies. And zero I mean, coming on to very specific, just
Of
an
course,
example
yes.
for a better understanding of the people who zero carbon emission is one of the major factor that Pakistani government and the Pakistani political parties and the Pakistani youth and the people ought to understand and demand. It's a two-way action. The political parties understanding and bringing these issues in their agendas, in their manifestos, and it's a vice versa also. The public demanding this to be
Yes,
there
indeed.
in the manifesto of the political parties and action by the political parties before they getting elected to the offices. For the both ways to work, advocacy comes the first and the foremost. We have to make the people realize that the climate change is a major factor,
Right, and
determining.
Ayub Shah Sahab, considering the global shift towards zero emissions, like you rightly mentioned, and of course towards cleaner energy resources, what do you think needs to be done by the political parties to align their manifestos in accordance with the outcomes of COP28?
Yes, they number one, they have to understand what the COP28 majorly means. You know,
And what were the outcomes?
Yes, we have to control the global temperature, and for controlling the global temperature, the major contributor, that is carbon dioxide, ought to be controlled, which means we have to reduce the carbon emissions both in-house and work internationally also. This is the climate change is an international phenomena. Pakistan may not be one of the major carbon emitting countries because we are not that industrialized, but at the same time we do contribute to the local environment. We talked about Lahore also and Karachi also, the environment getting polluted only because of the cars emitting carbon dioxide uncontrollably. So the political parties ought to include in the agenda the actions they think are the foremost, the actions they think can be effective towards zero carbon
emission. Can you tell us some specific actions that needs to be included in the manifestos to align them in accordance with the outcomes of COP28?
The major can be carbon pricing.
Yes.
They ought to promise the people that they, after they come into the offices, will introduce a carbon pricing policy. They will effectively implement the carbon pricing policy. And second is a shift from the greenhouse gases emission systems to the other sustainable non-greenhouse gases emission systems. Meaning thereby they have to promote the policies, support the actions by the people at large in terms of shifting onto a renewable energy resource. So electric vehicles are one of the major policy, I must say one of the major policy initiatives that the new government can take, the parties consider introducing, that how they can bring about a major change in the car manufacturing in Pakistan from fossil fuel based cars, that is auto engine, onto a non-fossil fuel based cars that are electric vehicles. Similarly, in the major infrastructure side, on the infrastructure side, they have to introduce the policies by not bringing up infrastructure that is not climate resilient or that is not bringing in resilience inside the Pakistan, as well as contributing globally. And thirdly, they have to understand and shake hand with the kind of the kind of major carbon emitters to divert their carbon credits to Pakistan. This is a major action that is needed, which will both stabilize our economy and which will also promote non-carbon emitting industry introduction into the Pakistan.
Right. So Naveed Saab, of course these are all important points, and when we talk about these important points, of course climate finance comes into play. Do you think that the political parties have that brainstorming sessions with the experts to actually lay out some implementable steps to move towards these policy measures, or because all these structural changes or the reforms or moving towards cleaner energy resources need a lot of finance, climate finance is needed. Do you think that these political parties are prepared, and what kind of experts should be on board when we talk about these manifestos of political parties?
Mariam, political parties are not prepared for it. Unfortunately, they should be prepared for this because they are going in the elections. I mean, normally they should have been going for such steps, but specifically if we consider this election time, they are going in the elections, they should have done their complete homework about the environment issue, number one. Number two is it is workable. How is it workable? the fitness certificates are issued in the entire world. In UK, every car or every industry is issued fitness certificate for the smoke or the carbon emission. Any car or any industry which is not fit for
environmental
standards is never issued certificate and is closed or is banned. Number one. Number two is this, that this should be included in the manifesto, and every political party should use the social media as well as the electronic media or the print media for awareness. Create awareness for the masses, how to go in the market or in the field to combat pollution or to combat this carbon issue. We need to go for green revolution. We need to go for, in last tenure, billion tree was there, but it was never been materialized. So we need to materialize billions and billions of trees to combat the floods or the environmental issues.
So Ayub Sahab, when we talk about manifestos of political parties, and there is often criticism on these manifestos that they are mere wish lists and they are grand promises to the people, and there is no substantive policy measures put forward for the people. Can you suggest some of the policy measures to be included in these manifestos, especially when we talk about climate change and agriculture?
Very rightly brought on, ma'am. We have to understand the policy cycle. It starts with the policy making, then policy advocacy, then policy implementation, and then there's a feedback back to the rectification of the policy. So political parties have to understand the entire policy cycle, and no policy is completely independent in the modern world. Every single policy that they will be introducing or they have in their manifesto to be introduced ought to be linked with the other policies and they impact the other policies. Now, when we're talking of the climate change, it's an overarching phenomena that affects all the sectors. It affects the health sector, the education sector, the social sector, the economic sector, the development sector, and the production sectors. So these policies, I mean, in terms of the climate change policies that I'm talking about, ought to be all encompassing, and the political parties have to understand and show as to which policy is how to be tailored to come in conformity with the climate change policy that they'll be introducing, and what the overall climate change measures, climate resilience measures, and disaster reduction measures, and risk reduction measures they'll be introducing in terms of the impact they have onto the people. Flood reduction, maybe because the flood is one of the major disasters that we face and it affects most part of the people. Around 35% of Pakistan it affected last year, in the last few years, I'm sorry. So you see, what measures are they going to introduce to sustainably address this issue? And I think political parties have to keep in mind the sustainability and policy continuity also.
Of course.
Any whimsical policy or isolated policy only for the sake of fetching votes, as you said, it's a wish list. Yes, it's a wish list, will not work as such, and they have to come back on it. Their sustainability, a policy's resilience itself on sustainability itself and advocacy itself is dependent upon how good that policy is, how effective that policy is, and how much it will be bought by the people. If a policy is coming out of the people, out of the wish of the people, understanding of the people, and has impact onto the people in return, that policy sustains itself. No government, no political instability, and no disaster can change that policies. And we have many examples of policies working in Pakistan that were grand and that were of such kind. So the political parties ought to understand that and have to introduce in their manifestos even now, or if not done, after coming to the offices, undertake those policies which are sustainable and which are linked to the climate change, which introduce climate resilience, exploiting the resources that are available globally.
And Ayub Shah Sahab, when we talk about, of course, the political parties' manifestos, decarbonizing the economy, and of course that remains an important aspect. Do you think there is clarity among the political parties and what needs to be done to take those steps? Because climate change is not an individual issue in itself. it is going to be impacting our economic development, economic progress as well. So do you think there is clarity among these political parties, and what needs to be done to bring that clarity?
Yes, to the best of my understanding, there are big gaps. There is no clarity across the policy corridors at the moment in the political parties. And it's very rightly been reflected in their manifestos by the lack of this very subject being addressed rightfully. So this clarity has to be built. They have to understand that the sustainability of the policies is important. They have to understand the conformity of the policies to the climate resilience is important. And they have to understand how all of their policies in all the sectors that they are trying to touch upon ought to be made in line with the climate resilience and to be exploited. The climate resilience is something that we have to work on. If we invest in the climate resilience, we will not be investing in disaster management, or we will not be wasting our resources.
So when we talk about decarbonizing for economic development, in your opinion, what steps should be taken, are needed in the manifestos, that these are concrete steps that we are going to be taking for decarbonization and they are going to be impacting our economic development?
We have to incentivize, the decarbonization can be done across different sectors in different manners. It's a very complex phenomena. But right away, say, if I have to pick up an example and say how it can be done in the industrial sector, that is production sector, we have to transform from the carbon emission or carbon intensive or fossil fuel intensive manufacturing to the least carbon fuel consumption industry. And this is a major change. We have a lot of industry in Pakistan from small to medium and medium to large, like cement production, like steel production, which are carbon intensive. They emit a lot of carbon. So not only that their emission has to be transformed and made environmentally safe, but also their inputs have to be looked into. So we have to turn towards innovation across all the sectors. We have to turn towards, similarly is the case of the transport sector. So if we have to talk of the mass transits or maybe the railway system itself, probably in the world we have electric trains there. But in Pakistan we have highly fuel dependent, renewable, non-renewable fuel dependent trains, and it's a massive network. Similarly, our dependence upon the trucks, that is in transportation of the goods and the containers across the country is too much, which should be reduced. Say a truck is extremely highly dependent upon the the fossil fuels, and in comparison to the trucks, if we introduce railway based carriage across from Karachi to Peshawar, we have a lot of a rush in terms of the Afghan transit trade. We have a lot of rush in terms of other imports for the industry, including steel and other even the coal for the cement industry we import, and we transport that coal by the trucks. So the trucks have to be replaced somehow with the railway based larger
that
massive
is one
carriages.
Of the steps that you recommend for decarbonization.
And similarly other steps, and similarly if you go down to the social sector, say per se, you still have mayas that are required to be introduced, reducing the energy consumption in the schools, in the colleges, in the major buildings, infrastructure side.
Counting your carbon footprint.
And yes, that is, we talked about earlier, that how can we pay for the carbon, carbon pricing. If I'm using 5 cars without any restriction, well, I'll keep using unless I have to pay for the price for the carbon that I'm emitting. Of
course. And Naveed sir, when we talk about these issues, engaging the local communities is very important. But when we talk about the current debate surrounding the forthcoming elections, this seems to be missing. What needs to be done to engage actually local communities? Because a lot of these voters are young people, and of course they have stakes because their future is directly dependent on the climate change. So what needs to be done for collective efforts of these political parties and manifestos to make collaborative efforts for sustainability?
We need to enhance our transportation system. We need to provide that level of trains or the buses to the commuters, so that they prefer to go to one place to the other, to one city to the other, using these facilities. Number one. Number two, one thing is very common and very ordinary, which is smoking. You should not smoke in the presence of the family or in the presence of the other friends or family members, because one smokes, the other all are other suffer. This is very common, and if you ask any person not to smoke, he minds or she minds. I mean, it is not the matter of feeling. It is a matter of taking care of the others as well.
Of course, and this is part of civic responsibility as well.
Definitely. And one thing, as far as the transportation is concerned, railway should be strengthened in Pakistan. If we strengthen the goods trains network from Peshawar to Karachi, or from Quetta to Karachi, the number of trucks on the roads will be reduced.
Let's move towards the other aspects, that is the marine life. That is also important, because when we talk about our cities, a lot of a significant issue is the damage to marine life or when we throw, of course, garbage to the Arabian Sea. So do you think, of course, that remains an important issue, but that seems to be missing in the relevant political parties' manifestos?
Yes, our water and sanitation systems across the country in major cities needs addressing. They lack proper recycling, they lack proper disposal, and same translates into the living Indus phenomena that you talked about. Unless there is an Indus, there is no sustainability of life across the Indus.
Right.
And same when goes down to the Arabian Sea, we are affecting and damaging the entire ecosystem in the marine. So our plastic disposal ought to be recycled. And
of course, and political parties actually need to take concrete steps when we talk about understanding of these issues as well. So to talk more about it, we are joined now online by Mr. Shehryar Khan. Welcome to the program. So Shehryar, when we talk about political parties' manifestos, climate change and of course agriculture remains missing from the main debate that is taking place surrounding the forthcoming elections. What do you make of this critical issue and what needs to be done by the political parties to create debate, because this is going to be of course impacting the economic development of the country?
So Mariam, thank you for including me. And secondly, the whole issue of climate change should be of utmost importance and should be on top of the agenda of all political parties. And it's an emergency that we are going through when it comes to Pakistan's role and the vulnerability that Pakistan faces from the devastating impacts of climate change. I personally don't see a lot of political parties when it comes to developing of their manifestos that they have included or they have shown urgency towards this cause. And the youth of Pakistan can play a very important role in bringing and holding and bringing the political parties to task and asking them on what their agenda is and what their policy would be to tackle this.
To be missing, that seems to be missing from the online debates as well, because like we discussed yesterday as well, that of course some of the political parties are yet to announce their manifestos, but when we look at the past manifestos as per PIDE reports, only 20% of these critical issues are included in the party manifestos. So you pointed about the young people, the young voters discussing these issues and of course diverting attention of political parties towards these issues. But when we look at the online discourse surrounding the elections, this seems to be missing. What needs to be done to bring it into public consciousness?
So you're perfectly right, Mariam. When it comes to the impacts that climate change has on our health, our lives, and our economy as well, the urgency seems to be missing. And even if we look at the air quality, which is a big issue, if we look at Islamabad, if we look at Lahore, and if we look at Karachi, and I was looking at the air quality index reports that were coming in, Lahore was even beating surrounding developed cities when it came to the worst air quality that is present in right now. And most of the times the air quality in Lahore is hazardous. And you've also seen that the caretaker government, even in Punjab and the federal government as well, they give holidays in schools because the air quality is so bad. So if the breathing of our citizens is like at stake now because of the air quality, when it comes to the marine life that all panelists and you were discussing previously, the health of the Indus, when it comes to sustainability and when it comes to sustainable agriculture, I personally think there needs to be more lobbying and there needs to be more advocacy to bring the political parties at par, and they have to like realize that climate will also be one of the key areas in which there will be a lot of like requirement when it comes to developing sustainable public policy. Climate finance would be a major component of the budget that
Of
will be
course.
coming in June, July.
Right,
As soon as
right.
new political parties come into power, and when they're developing the
Right, but
budget in
Shrejar,
consultation
what do
with
you
IMF.
suggest that political parties should do regarding of course, the challenges posed by recurring national disasters and adaptation needs in their manifestos?
So, Mariam, first of all, any climate policy that is developed, and by the way, we already have a climate change policy
Yes.
that the previous government and the caretaker government has taken forward. So, when it comes to implementation of any policy, the finance aspect of that policy is very important. We can make a lot of like tall claims, but if it's not backed by financial commitments, it would be very difficult to implement those policies. So, when it comes to the loss and damages fund, which Pakistan helped create in the previous COP, and in this like COP that we also discussed in the previous programs that was held in Dubai, there was like a lot of commitment by developed countries in funding that loss and damages fund, and Pakistan is one of the primary recipients because it's like one of the countries which is like most devastated by climate action, the impacts of climate change. So Pakistan needs to come up with a financial plan which is like missing, and which is like what the government that will be coming in will be working on, is to incorporate the climate finance and how to access the loss and damages fund and develop a sustainable policy for the next like 4 to 5 years in which we can mitigate the effects of climate change.
Right, and what specific measures should be adopted by these political parties to, of course, to reduce green gas emissions, especially when we talk about the agriculture sector that is impacted by it?
So, Mariam, for that, there needs to be a holistic and an inclusive policy. So, first of all, what all the key stakeholders and the key policy makers will have to do is they will have to like come and like in the federal cabinet, they would have to bring together all the policy makers that are focused on agriculture, that are focused on industry as well, that are focused on power generation. All of these sectors are connected, and historically what happens is that all of these ministries work in silos, and it's like a very individual based policy that is like being implemented. The issues that Pakistan is facing, especially when it comes to climate change, it basically needs a whole of a nation approach. So all of these stakeholders will have to like sit together, and when a holistic policy for the next 4 to 5 years is being developed, all of these stakeholders have to be sitting in consultation. The Ministry of Finance has to be involved, the Ministry of Planning and Development, whoever will be looking at industries, agriculture, they will all have to like come and like share their ideas and develop a roadmap for the next 4 to 5 years in which they basically cater to all of these impacts.
Of course. So, Ayub Shah Sahab, these are important issues, but deforestation also remains a key element, like you earlier mentioned about billion tree program, but unfortunately in the first 100 days, this wasn't like completed, and there needs to be, of course, substantive plans. What do you suggest should political parties do specifically to address deforestation issues? Because we earlier discussed about the health issues emerging as a result of deforestation.
This deforestation and vice versa, afforestation and reforestation are some of the major aspects that Pakistan needs to look at. And the political parties now competing for the election ought to understand and bring the issue onto their agendas, onto their manifestos. One of the major reform is, of course, we have policies there. We have a ban on cutting of the trees in our northern areas. We have certain other instruments in place, but they are not effectively being implemented. And the land cover change, though, is not negative in Pakistan. It's positive as has been observed by some of the observers, but it is not that positive, or afforestation or reforestation campaign is not as effective as it should have been. So the political parties have to understand and devise and innovate a policy whereby we can have a very rapid afforestation, that too of introducing innovatively those particular kind of trees which need less of which in net effect is less carbon emission, reduced water consumption, and more adaptability to the different nature of soils. So if I have to say, since there is a devolution after 18th Amendment and the forest departments are working at the provincial level, there is a need to restructure the forest departments and the legacy hierarchy that they had and the legacy means that they had ought to be
restructuring is important. And Sharyar, when we talk about restructuring, of course, one of the outcomes was the key issue of restructuring, but that needs funding. Do you think that the political parties are prepared, and what needs to be done to bridge the gap when we talk about operationalizing these critical climate funds?
So that is where Pakistan has been lacking. So Pakistan has been very strong when it comes to advocacy and bringing its case to the international arena. And Pakistan was one of the crucial and one of the most important countries in establishing the loss and damages fund.
Right, but that is not reflected in the current debate surrounding the forthcoming elections. So do you think, so what needs to be done?
So we'll have to develop a holistic plan, and we'll need to get on international experts that specialize in developing financial and technical proposals that will be required to tap into that funding. And that support we can get from international UN organizations. We can get those from the technical experts that basically are available in the World Bank. So they basically know on how to basically work on these very technically sound proposals, and they have to develop a roadmap. So you can't just like access funding just like that, but you have to like develop a roadmap for the next 4 to 5 years on where Pakistan will be heading. It should be in line with the federal policies that basically reflect those roadmaps. And then using those policies and those technical experts, you have to develop these long-term proposals. And then those proposals need to be backed by financial proposals as well to tap that international funding. So over there, I think Pakistan is a bit lacking when it comes to that expertise, but that expertise
Lastly, Sharyar, we are concluding the show. Can you suggest some implementable solutions that should be included in the party manifestos when we talk about these, of course, forthcoming elections, and what needs to be done to engage the young voters on these critical issues?
So
just
Mariam,
2-3 lines.
The roadmap for all political parties is already available. The climate change policies are there. The national action plan to curtail climate change devastation is also there. All these political parties, what they need to do is like take out priority points from all of these policies and include them in their manifestos and explain to the young voters on what their priorities would be in the first 100 days and where those 100 days will lead to developing a roadmap to cater to all of these issues for the next 5 years. And this is what they need to present as soon as possible.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Sharyar Khan, for joining us in today's program. Thank you very much, Syed Ayub Shah Sahab, for joining us in today's program. Thank you very much, Mr. Naveed Aman Khan, for joining us in today's program. Of course, in today's program, we discussed about the lack of critical issues debate when we talk about the political discourse surrounding the forthcoming elections. Of course, the political parties need to identify key issues of short, medium and long-term nature, and then present implementable plans for these key issues. That's all from Game Changer tonight. Take care. Allah Hafiz.